Okay, cool. So, welcome to the, I guess, Bill the Beans comedy podcast. We have local South Florida comedian Jay Guy. He
Hey,
he did really well at the Palm Beach Improv featuring the Saturday night Eddie. So,
Very
yeah, and then
cool.
man,
we have
once in a while, I do really well. I'll tell
Yeah,
some
I
jokes.
actually I actually caught you do really well. We were together in Orlando, and you were hilarious and smart and a good comic, and I predict big things for you. I did that. I did well, not in comedy,
Not
but
not a comedy.
not in comedy.
That's hilarious.
you know, there's some construction work in the area because Florida is always under construction. No, I think you're a really top notch comic, and I could tell that you're smart enough to know what to do, and at the same time you have the hustle that we all have, that you need to have to be really good at what you do. So
Thanks,
there's
man.
my compliment. It's over. It's the truth. It's the truth.
Compliments, but I'm gonna take that with that grain of salt that it came with.
Yeah. Well, it's more pepper. It was an assault on logic. That's what it was.
That prediction actually is coming to fruition, Eddie, as Jay recently placed third in Florida's Funniest Comedian. He beat out at least 200 comedians that competed,
Oh, that's
I
great.
think. Yeah.
Yeah, I keep upping that number up every time. It's 250, 500,
Yeah.
1,000. I beat out like at least 1,000, I think.
Yeah. He came in third. There was only 2 people in the contest.
Yeah, no, but Jay, it was talking about the workshop he took with you in Orlando and how it helped him out with his style. You want to tell him, Jay?
Yeah, so I remember I got invited, just a long story short, I got invited by Jim Patterson, who's a huge Eddie Brill fan. Spoke extremely highly of Eddie, and he was like, "You got to take this class. It's really cool. Eddie will basically, you do 5 minutes, Eddie will critique you. We'll go around the room, everybody will talk about it." So I was like, all right, well, I'll drive 3 hours. And I drove to Orlando for 3 hours, and I had to be back down here for something. I don't remember what it was. But I drove up there, hung out pretty much, all morning until the class started. Met Eddie, everybody, all the comics in there seemed pretty cool. In the Orlando scene, everybody got up and did time. I did time. And Eddie gave me some very strong critiques, which I recorded and I still have for my records.
Wow.
But one of those critiques were, "Hey man, you're a nice guy. You're a nice guy. Don't do mean jokes." And I remember hearing that, I was just like, "Oh, I am I am a nice guy." He's like, you don't do mean jokes. Some of those jokes are mean. They're mean spirited.
Why do you think you did mean jokes?
I think it's because they're funny to me. They're funny to me, and
Well,
I think
that's important. Like I'm an idiot for telling you not to do jokes that are funny to you, because you should do stuff that's funny to you. But I think that what I got from it was that you were creating somebody who you weren't, and I think the best way for all of us to be the most authentic selves. And I saw, what's interesting about the class is that I have all of the comedians critique each other and all become teachers for the day. And what happens when you critique others, you're really just projecting your own stuff onto other people. So you learn from hearing yourself. And that's sort of the trick of the whole class, is that, you end up saying things to other people when you're really just saying it to yourselves. My critiques are just, they're different because I've been doing it for a long time. But when I saw you critique other people, I saw what kind of a human being you were. And I wanted you to bring that onto the stage. I thought that would be your biggest asset, was to be the most, Jay guy that you could be.
Yeah, no,
it definitely helped me 100%, 100%. So now I do mean jokes in a nice spirited way.
no, but Jay, your writing is clever though. I mean, there's some jokes he says, Eddie, and then he puts analogies to it, and then it's like he ties two different things with similar points of view, and it just gets laughs. I mean, it's like, this is genius. This writing. What's your writing style?
My writing style is, I talk a lot to my friends and we just go back and forth. And I'm a huge Bill Burr, Patrice O'Neal fan. Those guys are great at analogy comedy. You know, so I study that, and they basically do the exact same thing. They make preposterous statements that just seem like, oh, what a crazy thing to say, and then they back it up with another analogy that just makes it come together. And you're like, oh, I totally agree now, or I get where this guy's coming from. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So I'm a huge fan of that, and I like being able to do that. And I have a lot of conflicting ideas inside of me, especially when it comes to relationships and things like that, which I love to be able to talk about because I feel like a lot of people go through that same thing. And so when I'm talking to my friends about stuff, you know, everybody's laughing and we're just throwing ideas back and forth. And when things are good, I'm like, all right, I'm going to use that.
Yeah, because the best thing is to speak your truth, you know, and your truth is sometimes you have a vulnerability like, oh my God, you know, this, I'm always down because this happens to me, or, you know, sometimes I'm an idiot or judgmental because, you know, that's in my background, or all human beings have that judgmental kind of thing. And you bring that up, that's, you know, that's what these, you know, Bill Burr, when he was a younger comic, everybody sucked but him in his act, and it's not compelling when that happens, you know. I mean, it's funny to do that, and he should continue to do it, and he does it, but it has to come back to bite you in the ass every once in a while. And that's when Bill really made the big turn, is when he realized, you know, look, you're an idiot, but so am I. And you know, that's sort of the theme of that. But those two guys, Patrice and Bill, were the most honest people, and nice. And I say were because of Patrice. You know, it's but they're really good guys, and they're really honest guys and vulnerable guys, and their strength comes in the fact that they're telling their truth, and that's what I wanted to see in you.
I'm working towards it.
Yeah, it's coming out on him too. Like the truth is coming out. There was a situation at Kelly Brothers with his hosting, Eddie. There was people that got into a fight, and then we started the show maybe 5-10 minutes after, and he was able to get the crowd to not be worried, relax, watch the show. How did you pull this off, Jay?
I just made fun of the situation, man. To me, like it was pretty funny to me. It was like a serious fist fight happening right there inside of it felt like a 10 by 10 space bar.
Irish pub.
Right there. And we're just like, all right, we're gonna start this
in the room where the
room, in the exact room.
Right by the stage.
Somebody got knocked out, and they just drug him 10 feet from where he got knocked out outside the bar. And
I once had a gig in Cape Cod. I forget what city in Cape Cod, and they have like a glass window. You're on the stage, and there's like 3/4 window going like behind you, and you could see outside. And there, you know, it was really great. It's a beautiful part of the world, you know, Cape Cod. And it was, you know, a lot of drinking and having a good time. And all of a sudden I'm doing my set, and a huge fight breaks out outside the glass.
Wow.
So the whole crowd was watching the fight, and they weren't paying attention to me because it was much more exciting to watch this fight. And so instead, what I did was I ended up calling the fight like I was, you know, a boxing announcer. And I was playing two parts, myself and Howard Cosell, you know, calling the fight. And it really brought the crowd together because they're already watching the fight. They weren't going to pay attention to me, but the fact that I started calling it play by play, you know, right and a left, and, you know, and I gave them names like Sully, because, you know, we're in New England, and Howard Cosell, I think this guy has a future, you know, and it's the best way to handle it because, you know, you're not going to tell the crowd, hey, wait, I got these jokes about the language. Listen to me.
That's exactly right, man. I think I did something similar. I didn't call the fight, but I was like taking bets. I was like, man, you got a comedy show and, you know, a knockout bout.
You did do that, actually.
Off with a bang, and it was just like, I just played with it.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I was creative Eddie doing that. And then Jay Guy, when I first met him at like a clean coffee shop, and I thought he was a new comic, but he was not a new comic. He did comedy before that. He was
Mm.
at feature level. I had no idea you did that. Why did you quit?
Okay, so that's a funny story. I definitely was not at feature level, 100%, not at feature level.
Didn't
But
you have feature
I'm
gigs at that point though?
I say I did comedy a while ago. I started comedy in probably 2007 or 8, something like that.
Right.
And I was 19 and I went to my first open mic, fell in love with it. Got on stage. Most of the time I only knew about the improv. I didn't know about the local scene. So I would do pretty much every open mic every month there. Fort Lauderdale, Hard Rock, Miami, and I did a Miami show. And I remember driving all the way down there to do the 5 minutes, and I bombed, and it was like horrible. It was a horrible feeling, and I was just like out of money, and I was just like, I can't do this without money, and I need to find a job that's not, I was working 60 hours a week at retail.
That's
And I was
hard.
like, this is not, I can't be in Miami leaving at 12 a.m. feeling terrible about myself going to work at this thing. So I was just like, I need to find something else. So I told myself, I started researching what would be a great job to have that's part time, where I could make a
Mhm.
living and do stand up on the side. And I researched being a paramedic. And I was like, all right, medicine. Let me look at medicine. What can a paramedic do? And in Florida, they basically, you could work in a hospital or for a private ambulance company, and you could do that for like 36 hours a week, 12-hour days. And I was like, that gives me 4 other whole days to do comedy. You make like 36 grand a year, which, was enough for me where I was like, all right, I could get an apartment and I could just do stand up and drive around. And then I went to paramedic school. I was like, I just jumped all in. I was like, I can't. Paramedic school is full time and it's studying full time. And I did night classes and day classes.
Mhm.
So I just didn't have time. But I would do comedy every chance I got. So I would still do it probably once every 3 months. I would just pop in, but just to improv. And I would go to Robot sometimes to check it out. And while I was going to paramedic school, a lot of guys in there who were going to paramedic school were going because they want to be firemen. And I have no idea about what firemen were doing. I didn't know what that life was like. And pretty much hanging around, you hang around a bunch of people who are doing something, you start adopting those values. And I was just like, let me check out this fireman thing. So I started looking into that, hanging out with all the same people.
But these guys are heroes. These kind of people are, putting their life on the line. So
Yeah.
no matter the fact that it's not comedy, the part that's important is that for you, you're fitting in with these people who have, a bit of a soul where you're like looking out for other people. So there has to be some kind of you probably pulled from that well of the kind of people that were there.
Oh, for
It's not
sure.
like
I think I definitely have like a people pleasing nature. From my father, he's definitely somebody who goes out his way for everybody all the time, puts other people in front of him all the time. So I definitely got that. But when I was in fire school and these guys just amped up firefighting like it was the greatest thing in the world. And I was just like, man, it was just talked about how close you become with strangers and it just feels like a family and this and this and that. So I ended up going to fire school, fell in love with it, got a lot of the same similar characteristics that say a lot of same similar, I would say, feelings that I have for stand up are almost parallel to firefighting for me. It's like I get variety when I go on stage. I never know what's going to happen. It's just the same thing when I go to work. I never know what's going to happen. I feel like I'm helping, I'm making some kind of difference, So I go into somebody's house, we give them medical treatment and take them to the hospital, or we put fires out of buildings, like all those things. So I get that sense of impact. And it's the same thing with stand up. It's like you do jokes and people are coming up, oh, you're awesome, that was so great, you're hilarious, and you're just like, man, I had impact on this person. I made them feel good.
Imagine if you got heckled as a fireman. You suck. Fire out.
Right? That'd be terrible.
you'd be like, at least I'm funny.
I mean, that happens. I guess I've seen firemen get heckled before. Like, if you're
Wow.
like, you guys are always at Publix. What are you doing at Publix?
There was a fire at Publix. You're trying to extinguish it. I mean, come on.
What was the first time you did comedy, and how did you get the nerve to go up and do it?
Okay, so I think that's a very significant story. The first time I saw comedy was at Palm Beach Improv back in the day, where it was like a hallway. Eddie, you might remember this, but it was like behind Wet Willie's, super small, like a hallway, probably fit 150 people in there. I got tickets online. I had just turned 18, and I was like, I want to see what this is about. I'm a huge Dave Chappelle fan. He talks about going to comedy club. So I looked up who was going to be there. Some unknown dude at the time was, his name was Kevin Hart. I don't know if you heard of him, but nobody knew who this guy was. I bought tickets. They're like $15 each. Me and my girl go. I'm 18, so you got to go to the late show on Saturday if you're 18. I go there. There's nobody in line. We're ahead. We get there super early. We're standing by the podium. They got the restaurant doors that swing back and forth open. And every time they swing open, you see Kevin Hart on stage. And there's laughter coming out of there like every 10 seconds, like this uproarious laughter. I'm like, man, this is going to be good. This seems very exciting. So we get in, they bring us into the room, my first comedy experience. And immediately I'm like, I'm high. I'm just like, wow, this is crazy. This is all new. This seems so cool and exclusive. I feel like an adult, and my girlfriend's never done anything like this either. So she's just like, oh, I love this guy. He's treating me to new stuff. This is crazy. Kevin Hart comes on. Naeem Lynn, his opening act, comes out, crushes it. Kevin Hart comes out, crushes it, like tears, crying. I'm walking out of there, and I see one of the improv flyers. So you think you're funny? You think you want to do this? Blah, blah, blah. Give comedy a try. And I pick up the flyer, and I remember my girl being like, ew, that's disgusting. I'll pick that up. I went to the car, and I just sat it on my thing, and I was looking at it for like days. And I was like, I need to figure out what I want to do with my life, because I feel like working retail is killing me slowly. Every day I'm dying here. So I end up writing to, the improv at the time. Ramon Garcia was the guy. He called me back. He's like, hey, man, this is how it works. You do 5 minutes, bring 10 people. He's like, at that time, he was like, this is a great club to get started at. If you're good and you get good, you'll have comics coming here and they'll take you on the road with them. He's like, that's a huge possibility. Happens all the time. And I got super excited. I had no jokes ready. And I wrote everything in like, a week. Got on, I had a pretty good set. My voice was very Dave Chappelle like. So it was like really high pitch and like I did all those mannerisms, and it was just, if I look back at it, I'm like, what a hack. What a hack.
Well, no, every comedian, I can never say every, but most comedians act like other comedians at the beginning.
Yes.
My hero was George Carlin. So when I went on stage, all of my jokes had a rhythm that were George Carlin. But everybody, Brian Regan, you just name any comedian, they're acting like their favorite comedian, because you don't know better. The only person I've ever seen in my life come out, tell their own truth from the beginning and nonstop was Chappelle. Chappelle, to me, is one of a kind, one of the greatest comics of all time. Because he just came out and told his truth and didn't know better and never stopped doing that. But so don't think of yourself as a hack, is what I'm saying, because you did Chappelle. You're like 99% of the comedians out there, and it makes sense. That's what we do.
Exactly. I wanna focus this around Eddie now. At this point, Eddie was on who's Eddie? I don't know. Comedy Central, Fox, the talent booker. He was a talent booker for the Late Show. 10 appearances. So yeah, I'm happy that you're here. Thank you for coming. And Jay, thank you as well. I'm not.
No problem. I like the introduction. Like, this guy won 3rd place. Eddie Brill.
Yeah, this guy 3rd place in a competition. He, came 4th in the fire.
I was 3rd also, by the way, Jay guy, at Ultimate Miami. So I feel your pain.
How long have you been doing it?
I've been doing it for 7 years, including the pandemic. I just did it to to try to get women at first, but then I'm like, there's more to that because I'm so single, so it didn't work out as
Right.
expected. But you can help people, like if they're worried or if they have problems, we have the impact to make their day. So that's why I enjoy it.
Because people, when you tell the truth, which is pretty much what comedy is the foundation of comedy is the truth. I mean, you skew the way you think from whatever truth you set up, but the foundation, the essence is the truth. And when people, you connect with every human being that way. And that's why comedy is so powerful, because we connect, as like, just like Jay was saying, he went to the show or he saw Patrice, and you get connected by that. I saw George Carlin on TV. I was hooked. I mean, like a fish with a hook in my mouth, and that was it. I couldn't help it. It was, that there's a power that goes with the truth. That's why it's so weird that there's so much lying in the world, because there's no glory in that. There's so much baggage that comes with lying, but a comedian tells the truth, and that is beautiful and powerful and soulful, like nothing else.
So like, how old were you when you saw him?
I saw Carlin a lot, but when I really connected was the first time I saw him on Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. He had his album FM and AM that was coming out, and I always loved wordplay, and he did a lot of wordplay, and I went, oh my God, that's how I think, and I didn't think I wanted to be a comedian. I just loved him. My parents always had comedy albums in the house. My mom was hilarious, and we were always laughing in our house. It was a lot of fun, funny stuff going on. We had tragedy like crazy, but the way we got around it was by laughing at the crazy world that we lived in. And, we used to watch a lot of like the Carol Burnett show and, the Ed Sullivan show. And, like when I was a little boy, and watch the comedians. And, my parents were really watching, because my parents were really young. So they, it was like having older brother and sister.
Nice.
Around the house. So there was a lot of laughter. And Carlin was, but I never thought I'd be a comedian. And then I went to college to do broadcasting, because I love sports and news. I didn't love news. I just liked the idea of writing. And I wrote for the newspaper in Hollywood, Florida, the Sun Tatler. I liked that. I enjoyed that. And but I was going to school to be a broadcaster, and I met all these funny people right away. So here I am, I'm 17, just about to be 18. And I got into a comedy group with a bunch of really funny, cool, talented men and women. And we were really good. Surprisingly, we were just shockingly very good. And it was powerful to be that good, and to get the laughs that we got. It was like doing a drug and then chasing it for the rest of your life. And so I did, and then, I went to school with Stephen Wright, and, it's a lot of, I went to college with some of the biggest names in show business. And then we formed a comedy department there, where other comedians came in afterwards because of what we started. Like when we were there, Dennis Leary, Mario Cantone, and then after us, it was Laura Keitlinger and Bill Burr and David Cross. And you can go on and on and on, but it's all because of this program we had started, back in college. So after college was over, I thought, that was really fun, but I got to get a real job. I got to leave Boston, because Boston's a great town, but it's so small. I got to go to New York, where my friends are, and all this kind of stuff. So I quit stand-up, and I thought, and that's why I did stand-up, because our friends did it, and I just tried it. And I did well the first time, like most comedians. Most of us do well because we don't know better. And then you think you got it, and then you just bomb.
The second time, always.
Oh, yeah. And second time, oof. And third and fourth, and it's just. So but then I did well a couple of times, and it just feels so good. And then I quit in like 81, I think 81. And then in 1984, an opportunity came to me for a guy I used to go to college with. Where he worked at a restaurant, they wanted to do a comedy night, and they asked if I would run it. So, and I knew all these comedians, Mario Cantone, and in New York, I had met Susie Essman and Colin Quinn, and, all these people. We were all friends, and we got them together, and we started doing stand-up at this club that I kind of started called the Paper Moon. And every week I turned it into a big club, and it was packed all the time, and I got great comedians to come in, and eventually it became the Boston Comedy Club. Ours was there before it became the Boston. And I gave it up eventually and gave it to Barry Katz, who was running the Boston Comedy Company, and he turned the Paper Moon into the Boston Comedy Club. So I really started full time just before my 26th birthday. So I was still young, but the first time I did stand up, I was probably like 20, 21, but it's hard to say. I started, but for good, it was July of 84.
Wow. That's not only did you start doing stand-up comedy, but you were an owner too. Seemed
Booker. I would book the comedians, and it was great because I figured I'm going to create a space that comedians want to go to. So since I'm a comedian, I knew best how to create that. Plus, I also learned a lot at Emerson, where I went to college. We made sure that there was incredible lighting and sound in the comedy place. We had this guy, Scott Musmano, who was this genius lighting guy, and say, Jay's doing a bit about, being a fireman and the lighting is a certain way. And then he changes into another routine that he does about, shopping at the local store, and the lighting would change a little bit. It would be subtle, so you can almost see that it was a whole different thing. This guy was a genius. So we had this incredible club going on, and I was there every weekend, and either hosting or doing sets. And you can't. The only teacher in comedy, like my workshops, are really, I'm very proud of them, but you can't teach stand-up. The only way you can do it is you have to get on stage and just do it. And that's why this pandemic is killing us.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's so, I mean, have you done Zoom shows?
I did one, and that was the end. I said, because there's no feedback, it's a symphony. There's a rhythm that goes back and forth with you and the crowd. There's nonverbal communication with the pause that leads to laughter that you don't get with a Zoom show, or at a drive-in like they do, and you beep the horn. The Jerry Seinfeld was on 60 Minutes the other day, and he said, I want the real thing. I don't want the Zoom and this and that. I want the real thing. So, that my first show since March is going to be a small crowd of 40 people. It's the most they can have in California, but it'll be a crowd, and it'll be nice, and it's a nice enough space, and the people running it are pretty good. But I miss it like crazy.
Are you gonna be nervous though, because you haven't done it in a while? You're gonna be doing 45 minutes.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I'm nervous in advance, which is weird, but and the key is not to doubt myself. Is to go out there and really be honest and tell the crowd, look, I haven't done this in a long time.
Yeah.
Let's have fun, and whatever happens, happens. And that's the key, is to really be honest in the scenario. I'll tell you, one time I did the show, it was all these old people in hotels. They have these rooms. I forget what they call them. They just close them off, and they do events in these rooms. So they had this room set up in this Jersey place, and they had my name out in the front, no picture or anything, a comedy show. And I get there, and the crowd's really old. It's like Florida. like when I was growing up in Florida, it was like just the older folks. But this was in New Jersey. And I go up on stage, and the crowd, and I was done a lot of television by then. I was pretty confident. And I go out there, and I'm getting no laughs. And about 10 minutes in, I look at the crowd, and I say, look, I just want you guys to know, I don't think this is going well either. And,
like
they
a date.
laughed really hard. And I said, look, I've been at this a long time, and I usually do pretty well, but there's some kind of thing going on here that I don't understand and you don't understand. So let's talk about it. I go, there's other comics named Brill from the Catskill days. And there was a guy named Marty Brill and a guy named Charlie Brill. But I said, you guys probably thought you were going to see Marty Brill because that was their age group, this guy. And some guy goes, yeah, we thought it was going to be Marty Brill. So when you came out, we were confused. And I said, oh, so that's what it was. I said, well, look, I'm, Eddie Brill, and I've been doing comedy for a while, but I'm not like the old Catskill guys. I don't do old jokes. I make observations, I tell stories, I have a good time and do that. And I said, but so you guys are used to the joke tellers. So I don't know many jokes, but let me tell you the two jokes that I know. And I tell them, and they laugh. And then I said, do you guys know any jokes? And some guy goes, yeah, I know a joke. So I went out to the audience with the mic and I gave the guy the mic. He told the joke and got a big laugh. And some lady goes, I got a joke. And I brought the mic over to her and she told the joke. And it reminded me of a joke that I told. Then I went around the room. And so now for 45 minutes, we're having the time of our lives. And I turned around this, and like if I would have sat there and just went straight ahead for 45 minutes, it would have been a wreck. It would have been horrible. But you break down the barriers of what's going on and just tell the truth. And I'll never forget that. It was a very key moment in my life to realize, make best with what you have and find the truth in the scenario and have fun with it. So that's what I think is going to happen when I go to California. I'm not going to be as sharp, but I think by the second show, it'll all come back. So the poor suckers in the first show.
The rust will come off.
Oh, that guy sucked.
But I think you're right, though, Eddie. I mean, it's not just like, because if you just told jokes in that instance, they're not going to be entertained. They're going to feel as robotic. But by you talking and just involving them in the show, they're going to feel more included. And so your key is to be entertaining and be honest.
Yeah, I think that's the way it should be. You know, we're truth tellers, and you know that's what we do. And but there's all kinds of comedians. I mean, there are character comics, and you know, like a person like Richard Lewis or Gilbert Gottfried or Lily Tomlin, and they're all those comics I just named, you know, are geniuses, and they're all really great. And then, you know, there's all different kinds of comics. There's not one kind, and not everyone likes the same kind of comedy. So you just have to understand that you can't beat yourself up because you're not, you know, what the audience wants. You know, Jay, you said something earlier about being a people pleaser, and that's what I've been my whole life, a caretaker. You know, I took care of my family and raised them and all that stuff. So what I learned is not to try to please the audience, not try to please the audience, but to do what makes me the happiest. And if that pleases the audience, then it's a win-win. But if you're kissing their ass, doing jokes you think they're going to laugh, which goes outside of who you are, then it's a big fraud. And I think that's a big mistake. So what you do is you tell your truth, and if people and like, say, you know, like you talk about dating and meeting, you know, people for dating. If you go out on the date and all you're doing is trying to please someone, the other person gonna be like, look, this person doesn't have a backbone. They don't have their own thoughts. They're agreeing with everything I say. It's really not that attractive. It's not alluring. But if you stand up for who you are, I think that's I think that's sexier, and I think that works better in comedy as well.
Yeah, because it shows confidence. Like if you don't have confidence in yourself, people aren't going to be drawn to you in both aspects.
And also you can have confidence you can be nervous in the confidence, like let's say like a Woody Allen type of stand-up whose jokes are all about insecurity, but there's a strength behind that. You know, there's a knowledge of like, look, I'm insecure, and I keep screwing up, and this is the way things go.
Yeah, that's a good point. So Jay, you have a question for Eddie?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, in your career, if you could relive any moment, what moment would that be? And
something that I want to redo, or something that I want to,
like the emotion that you got after this moment. Because I know in comedy you have highs and lows,
right?
And I'm sure you got tons of highs. Like this weekend was my first time featuring at the club. That was a super high, as a pivotal moment for me.
He did well.
It went well. Just like, you know, everything came together nicely, and I feel like it was very impactful. And I know throughout my career, I have a lot of those moments. And this year specifically, I've had a lot of those moments already. Like I opened up for Damon Wayans. I was just ecstatic.
One of the greatest comics I've ever known.
Dude, he's super nice. He stayed after. He gave advice. It was just such a surreal moment, man. Such a surreal moment. It's like
I worked with him a lot. I was very, very honored to you know, share the stage with him. Just he was like Richard Pryor. He's that good.
Wow.
Really, he's that good, and you know, so true. But anyway, so as far as you want to know, like one of the greatest moments of my life was doing the show that I did by accident. And I've told this story before. I was working in LA. I was just recently I had started working in LA at the Comedy Store in late 86, October of 86. So in 87, I kind of moved out there, even though I kept my apartment in New York and moved to LA. And I lived pretty much at the Comedy Store. I had the Mitzi Shore, Paulie's mother, ran the Comedy Store, and she was very generous to me and put me up in the house behind the store.
That's
That her
nice.
daughter, she was very good to me. And my son, who's a comic, she was good to him as well. And she didn't even know he was my son. She just was a very important person in my life, and a lot of comedians. So I'm trying to remember. Oh yeah, so I'm there. It's in 1987 now, toward the end of it, and I go on stage, and I have a decent set. And this people come up to me after and say, "Hey, we're here to see the guy before you, and he really wasn't our style, but we liked you, and we have a show this weekend at for the Shriners, and would you do it? It's a couple $100." And I was so broke, I was like, whatever, $200. I'm all over that. And it was kind of a nice compliment. And I, what the Shriners are, the old, like Elks Club and like those kind of things, And so I figured it was a private party, at this club. So I get all set up. I borrow my friend's car. It's Saturday night in Los Angeles. I think it was Saturday night. And so I go, and I had another show at the Comedy Store later that night that I was supposed to do. So there's no cell phones, 1987. There's no, I have this thing called the Thomas Guide, which is a book, and I'm trying to find the address and how to get there and mapping my way. And when I go up to what seems like the address, it's this huge building. And as I get close to it, it says the Shrine Auditorium. So I misheard these people. I thought they said Shriners, but I'm working the Shrine Auditorium. Now, the Shrine Auditorium is an 8,800 seat theater where the Academy Awards are held. So I'm really confused. Luckily I dressed up, and so I go to the back door of the Shrine Auditorium, and I go, I don't know if I'm in the right place. What's your name? Eddie Brill. Oh, Mr. Brill, follow us. I'm like, Mr. Brill? The only time I've been called Mr. Brill is like when someone's mad at me, or my mother was yelling at me or something. So they take me to this dressing room, again, dressing room. And I'm passing these other dressing rooms on the way to mine. And it's like these old bands like the Coasters and the Shirelles and Jerry Lee Lewis and Jimmy Stewart, It's a Wonderful Life, Jimmy Stewart. And then Eddie Brill. I'm like, what? Is this like a prank or a joke? So I go in the room, I close the door, and I'm freaking out. Like, what? And there's only like a sheet of paper on the desk, and it's the order of the show. And I'm following Jimmy Stewart. And I'm like, what? What? So this guy comes in, the stage manager. Hi, I'm the stage manager. And, I said, what is this? They go, well, it's a show. We raise money for kids. The firemen and the policemen put it on every year. And they, we hire a bunch of people. And Joey Bishop, I don't know if you know who that guy is, one of the Rat Pack, Sinatra, the comedian in the Rat Pack, said he was sick and you're taking his place. And you're doing like 12 minutes or whatever. And I said, what does Jimmy Stewart do? And he says, well, he has poetry. He's written poetry, and he'll read poetry. And this is a rock group, and this is the soul group. And, this is whatever. It's a variety show. I said, okay. So I'm like freaking out. So I get to the side of the stage, and luckily I knew the MC. The MC wasn't on stage in the middle. He was on an off stage mic. It was a guy named Vic Dunlop, who was a stand-up. And I go, Vic, what is this? He tells me it's a thing. And he goes, look, it's a huge room. So I got a piece of advice for you. Don't rush. Take your time. Let the material get to the back of the room, because it's going to take a while to come back. So be more deliberate with your thing. Okay. So I go to the side of the stage. Stage manager says, look, when this is a very big stage, when Jimmy Stewart's done with his poems, start walking toward the middle, because it takes a while to get to the middle of the stage.
Wow.
So Jimmy Stewart's up there like, well, it's a beautiful tree and the flowers, and he's reading this poetry. And I'm like, this is fucking Jimmy Stewart. And he's, thank you very much. And the crowd goes nuts. It's Jimmy Stewart, for God's sakes. So I'm walking toward the stage, to the middle of the stage, and he's walking off, and I look at him and I don't know what to do. And I go, like when
the nod.
head nods back to me. I'm like, yeah. So I go out front, and luckily Vic gave me the great advice. And I have to admit, I crushed. And but I never heard more than 175 people laugh. This was 8,800 people, and it like hit me like a tear came to my eye because it was just the emotion of that many laughs. It was like, it was just crazy. And I couldn't believe it while it was happening. It was a dream. And when I was done, I walk off the stage and the crowd goes crazy. And I'm like, what? And I'm flying off the stage. And there's Jimmy Stewart standing on the side. He watched the thing. It was very funny, Eddie. And I'm like, oh my God. And then Jerry Lee Lewis pushes Jimmy Stewart out of the way to say, very funny, son. I like your comedy. We just take a picture with me. And it's like, oh God. So I'm finished my thing. And then I watched the other bands and the Shirelles, and they're fantastic. And it's a great show. And then I was so high from the power of it. And so now I have to go back to the Comedy Store and go do a set like at 1 a.m. or whatever. And
I'd be tired.
I crushed at this thing. So I get to the thing, and there's like 24 people in the audience at the Comedy Store. It's late at night. Everyone's hammered. I'm up on stage, and the guy, you suck. Fuck you. Get off the stage. And I'm like, nah, I don't suck. You could have seen me earlier. I was really good. You guys suck. Fuck. And that's one of the greatest nights of my comedy life. I've had a lot of incredible moments, but I would say that's the peak.
That's pretty good. That's hard to top.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to top. I was very, very happy. And I found the list of the rundown of the show not long ago. It's kind of cool to see that list. It was kind of nice.
Jay, aren't you supposed to perform there next Saturday?
Yeah.
You're doing the Late Show.
Yeah, the Late Show. That's what we're talking about. No, yeah. But I was going to ask you, since you said you went to school with Stephen Wright, I'm actually a huge fan of him with a dry delivery and one-liners. I kind of do that. What's different about him compared to other people?
Well, he's exactly the way he is on stage. He's when I get together with him, we still hang out all the time. We've known each other since 1978. 78, I think, is when I met him. And he is just so funny. And we laugh like kids. We're like, because we're both very similar. We love wordplay and funny ways to, do sort of switching with the words. And we just make each other laugh. We laugh at what we're about to say almost, because we can almost read each other. We know each other so long. And he's a really great guy, and really smart and really silly, which is a great combination. I was just in Florida in February. It was the last time I was down there. And I was doing a gig up in, I forgot where it was. It was north of Palm Beach. And I stopped in Jupiter he was visiting his mom who lives in that area. And we ended up sitting outside of this, sort of like, what do you call those little, not malls, strip malls. And him and I are sitting out front, and we're just doing play-by-play of people walking by. And we're laughing so hard and crying like two little children, laughing and crying. And the people walking by like, who are these sick, fuckers, And so, but he's really smart. He works really hard at what he does. And that's the key. This is not, there's a job, and you have to put the work in. You got to write all the time. You got to create all the time. You got to get on stage as much as you can. This is not, a lot of comedians will tell you this, or a hockey player said it the other day. I was listening to an interview with a hockey player in the draft. Like, when you're not working on your stuff, there's somebody else working hard at their stuff. So, you'll go nowhere unless you work, you put the work in. And that's what I do. I put the work in.
Yeah, that's great advice, Eddie. That it's about work, how bad you want it. I mean, there are times where I'll have it. I mean, probably not Jay, but I'll have it where I'm just frustrated, and I'm like, you know what? This is just not hitting. I need to take a little break, and it goes 2 weeks because of the quarantine, and I'm like, oh, I got to get back to it. Has this happened to you?
It does. At the beginning of the quarantine, it was a little frustrating and very sad, and so I got lost in that kind of thing. And then I just said, no, I gotta write. So I started just writing every day, whether it be a one-liner or I don't really write quarantine jokes, but I wrote one. I said, because I put on so much weight during this quarantine. I said, at the beginning of the quarantine, I was at the height of fashion, and now all these months later, I'm at the width. And that's very Stephen Wright too. But it was it's what one other one that I write. I wrote two jokes for the quarantine. The rest I wrote real material. The other one was because we're all by ourselves, and I don't have a girlfriend, so I live alone. And I wrote, I haven't tried to pleasure myself in like a week. I go, is it something I said? Something of that nature. And so those are the two jokes, but I'm writing every day, whether it's a story or a comedy piece or a joke or wordplay or whatever, just to keep being creative. And I've done a lot of these like interviews and chats with people about the industry. And the more you talk about it, the more you learn, you hear yourself, like we talked at the beginning about, the more you talk about it, the more you understand what it takes and what to do.
Yeah, that definitely helps. You're always doing something every day, it sounds, and that's what's helping you improve. I know Jay's dying to ask you a question, so I don't even want to interrupt what he's gonna
Are you
say.
still watching comedy right now? Do you still watch stand up?
Yeah, I do. I mean, like today, I got up too early today, and I just watched a bunch of Don Rickles interviews. I was so honored. I got to know him really well, and he mentioned my name on TV. He's my father's favorite comedian, and it made my father's life to hear Rickles talk about me on TV.
Nice.
I listened to him, and I just spent the day laughing. And I'll watch some Netflix stuff and watch some specials. There's a lot of great stuff from the past, and a lot of great new stuff. There's always a lot of great. There's not a lot of new stand up because there's not a lot of performances. But I mean, the Chappelle thing he did recently was powerfully brilliant and honest, and just inspired me to do the same kind of thing, to be honest and tell the truth, and also at the same time to try to get laughs. But I haven't been able to try it. I have to get on stage.
Yeah, I bet you're gonna be excited when it comes to that show in California.
I'm hosting the show on Saturday. There's this place in Connecticut where I've helped them for 20 years booking comedians for their show. And every comedian I've booked for them are major stars. And they love it. And we raise money for kids in the area. So they're always very generous, and they're always very nice. And they asked me if I would host this event for them. And I said, sure, I'll do it. And there's going to be a crowd. Yes, there'll be about 30 people, and the rest is going to be streaming. And I went, okay. And they said, you know what? We can have a crowd. So I said, well, I'm not going to really do stand up then, because I don't, it's not going to work like that. But I'll have fun and play, because I'm introducing, like, they'll have musical acts and stuff. And again, it's a fundraiser to raise money for the kids in the area and their school system. So it'll be interesting. I'll get on stage at least for the first time in a while. Won't really be able to joke because there's nobody to tell jokes to, but it'll just it'll be a nice first step before I get on stage on the 15th and 16th of October.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah, no, I know you're a talent booker. You were a talent booker, so you've seen a lot of comedians go up. I feel like just from talking to you, the strategy is you got to work hard, because if you're not, someone else is working. You got to be authentic. What other keys go up a lot? What other keys or common characteristics you see in really good comedians?
Is that the strength and the vulnerability. Not everyone is taught. There is a vulnerability in it. I remember one of the great examples is a sort of X-rated example is Robert Schimmel, who I was very lucky to be close to and traveled with for years and years and years. And the older brother I never had, which was really great. And he had a joke, and it's a great example. It's I'm not going to be able to do it justice by doing it here, but he said, I asked my wife if I can go in the other way, and she said, how about I take it? How about if I do you first? She had a vibrator and said, I have a vibrator. How about if I do you first? And the reason why that joke is great is because here's this guy acting all macho and, like, watch me, you know, own this situation. His wife it turns out to sort of, bite him in the ass, so to speak, because all of this bravado that he has gets knocked down immediately. Because no matter how cool we all think we are, we're all a bunch of nerds, especially comedians. And I think all humans are kind of, some people pretend they're not cool, that they've been cool all the time, but I don't think anyone, I mean, maybe Johnny Depp, but and he's from Plantation, by the way.
What? That's
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah. But anyway, I think so. I think it's. I had a joke once because I've always had issues with my weight. I've been heavy, I've been thin, and back and forth. And there was a time I was really heavy, and I did a set, and I said, I'm a little uncomfortable when guys are kissing, and it's a fault. Growing up, I was trying to point out that, look, it was during the time of gay marriage. And I wrote a joke saying, look, I think that we should never judge people, for anything but their, who they are, the sort of the Martin Luther King idea, the essence. And I said, growing up, I had a hard time watching two guys kiss, but then I also don't like to see two fat people having sex, and then I said, but I don't have a choice. you know and so and some of my friends were mad at me because I've never made jokes about my weight, but I didn't care. I got a huge laugh. But the thing is, what the whole idea behind the joke is, I'm an asshole because I had this part of my life where I was judging people based on their sexuality. And I've learned my lesson, which is also part of the joke. And but then again, who am I to do that, because I'm just as guilty of whatever shortcomings that I have for myself. So I mean, I don't know if I explained that well enough, but it's what it is that we're kind of judgmental at times. Like, I had this joke that I wrote years ago, because I grew up in Hollywood, Florida. I was born in New York, but I grew up in Hollywood, and there were a lot of French Canadians and in Hollywood. And I went to high school, junior high school there, and a lot of French Canadians in my high school. And I loved hockey. I still love hockey. And a lot of the hockey players' families were there. And one thing I noticed about Hollywood, Florida, where there were a lot of Canadian couples, and the men were usually short and fat and wore Speedos, and the women were gorgeous and and just tall and statuesque and in incredible shape. And I wrote a joke years and years and years ago that said, how do these guys get these women? Their Speedos are stuffed with money.
Huh.
So, but if you think about it, it's really kind of a shitty attitude to have, saying that these women are only money after money, and that I'm making this assumption, which is really cruel. That was my first attempt at that joke. When I rewrote it, I said, maybe they're doing it because their husbands have a lot of money, or maybe their husbands are really nice guys and not judgmental pricks like I am. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that turned the joke around and made it because that really was the truth. I was being an asshole with my judgment on these couples. Meanwhile, they love each other. They're having a great time. They're married. They're on the beach. They're loving each other. And I'm there out on the outside going, no one's gonna fuck that guy, unless he had money. And I'm the asshole in the story. So that's what I mean about the vulnerability. You tell the truth, and you realize that. Like, I wrote another joke about going to my old neighborhood in Brooklyn, and I was pointing out to some friends that were with me. I said, yeah, that's where my aunt lived, and that's where my friend Eddie lived, and that's where Scott lived, who shit his pants in the 5th grade. And I'm thinking, I'm like 55 years old, and I'm like, this poor guy, Scott, has gotten over shitting in his pants, and he's probably like married and has grandchildren and living in Indiana and playing with them and having a great life. And I'm the asshole who still uses that memory of him. So that was sort of the essence of that, whatever the joke that I'd come up with at the time. So again, it's that vulnerability that, you're a very long-winded answer to what you had asked me, is to find the vulnerability. That's what I look for in great comedians. I've always had a pretty good sense of who's really good because I compare. There's a soul. There's something underneath the you know there's we judge a lot of people for who they are on the outside as opposed to who they really are on the inside, and that that's a horrible way to be. So the key is to find what the essence of people are. And I always think of Nina Simone when I hear her sing. It's just like this God comes out of her. It's a soul that comes out of her, and that not everything's perfect. There's mistakes, and there's this, and there's and I prefer that over someone who sings and gets every note perfect, because there's no soul to that. You're painting by numbers. You're just filling in the blanks with what everyone else has done in the past. So when I saw Jay, and I'll embarrass you, I knew right away that if this guy put the work in, I think he'd be I know that he could be one of the best comics ever. And I don't doubt it. And and I told that to Patterson, and I told it to a lot of people, and I told it to you.
This is recorded, by the way, Jay. So I'll send you the recording.
But if you don't put the work in, you've blown a really good chance. So that's what I know. And I've never write 100%, but I found a lot of people who I helped their careers because I was put in a position as a comedian to help find really one of a kind. Like people say, that comedian's another, Jim Gaffigan. Well, if I'm not looking for another Jim Gaffigan,
yeah, you don't want that.
I'm looking for Jim Gaffigan, or I'm looking for someone who is themselves and different than anybody else.
Yeah. So now that you mentioned vulnerability, I was taught to use emotion words and to open up, but my style is, I'm not Stephen Wright at all. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Jay, but I do one-liners. Like I got a dry sense of humor.
Mm-hmm.
So I have this.
You're not Stephen Wright. Yeah, you're Fasil.
Yeah, so I have a dry one-liner style comedy. I'm self-deprecating to a certain extent. I just, to me, it's hard for me to just open up and just go out there. Do you think that's gonna impact me negatively if I'm not?
No, because in your one-liners, you're really telling how you think and how you feel.
Yeah.
And that's how that comes across. And not every comedian's the same. Look at Lenny Bruce, or look at pick Emo Phillips, or Maria Bamford is one of the greatest comics ever, or Paula Poundstone is one of the best live comics I've ever seen in my life. And they're so different because they bring what they bring to the table. So if that's your strength, that's what you work on, and you don't want to try to be somebody who you're not. Look at what's his face, his name just Andy Kaufman.
Yeah.
If someone told Andy Kaufman, well, you have to have joke, setup, punchline, we wouldn't have the genius of Andy Kaufman. So the key really is, first of all, I'm not, if I'm booking the David Letterman show, I'm looking for the comedians that are going to make David Letterman laugh. That's my job. If I was booking the Eddie Brill show, I might have a lot of the same comics, but I'd have a few different ones than what they would have on that show. So when I look for comedians as a booker, I look for people who would do well for the job. Like if I was doing a show, and they said that the show is going to be, all, European comedy. Well, I'm not going to book somebody from America, for a European comedy show. I'm going to book a bunch of Europeans. So you have to realize you just do what you do it best. There you go. There's your ride. And you book, you be the best you can be, and then people are going to use you because you're funny and talented, and you'll be right for whatever gig it is. But if you try to be somebody else for those other gigs, then you're wasting, you're fooling yourself, you're fooling the crowd. Yeah, I've known comedians who said, well, what do I have to do to change who I am to be on Letterman? And I go, it'd be the worst thing you could ever do. When people audition for me, I want to see the attitude of like, I don't need Eddie Brill. I don't need Letterman. I don't need this show that I'm auditioning for. Look, if you're smart, you'll book me. That's the attitude I'm looking for in the comedian. And,
yeah, you want them to believe in themselves and they have the confidence that I can do it.
Yeah, a strength, a backbone, that's what I look for.
How about you, Jake? You want to ask him a final question? I'll ask him a question and we'll close it out.
What's the top comic besides you can't use Carlin?
Well, to me, Richard Pryor was, to me the best, and him and Carlin were my one and 1A. I was working at the Comedy Store one night on stage, and they handed me a note, and it said, "When you're done, bring up Richard Pryor," and it was freaked me out. I was freaked out, and I had to finish, and I was like gulping, and I couldn't. I just got through it, and I said, "Ladies and gentlemen, Richard Pryor," and the crowd goes nuts, and he shakes my hand and says, "Nice job, kid," and that's it was ridiculous. It was so cool. But I have a lot of different favorites. I love Norm Macdonald. I love Chappelle. I love Chris Rock. I love Paula Poundstone, who doesn't get the props that she should get. She's the best live comic I've ever seen. And there's so many comics that I love that make me laugh, and all throughout history. And that was the question. Who's the favorites? Okay, and then all right, yeah, those are the favorites. Jonathan Winters. There's a thing on, if you've never seen Jonathan Winters, go on YouTube and look up The Stick, S-T-I-C-K.
Okay.
It's a 6-minute piece of him on the Jack Parr show.
Right? Doesn't he
black
just
and white
the whole thing?
Yeah, and it's 6 minutes, and it's one of the funniest, most genius moments. Letterman's favorite comic was back in the day was they and the crowd would talk to Dave before the show. He would talk to the crowd, and someone yelled out, I had been with the show. I was there 17 years. I guess it was year 14 or 15. Someone yelled out, "Hey, Dave, who's your favorite comedian?" And without missing a second, he said, "Jonathan Winters." So there's a guy, if you've never seen him, just a genius. So
I have to check that out.
There's my folks.
Yeah. So, okay. So my question to you, obviously, because of it's about relationships, because I know you're single now, but I think you would be killing it in the online dating game with sending messages and creating a profile. So are you do not want women? Is that what's making you want to be single?
Yeah, I hate them. No, I used to play doctor up with my upstairs neighbor when I was a little boy. But we didn't have sex. We would just overcharge each other for pharmaceuticals. That's an old joke. I did online, and I met I met 3 women in my life online that I've had incredible relationships with years and years ago. But online, it's very difficult because a lot of fakes and a lot of, that kind of stuff. I had met someone just before the pandemic, but they lived in Texas, and we were going to maybe start something, but this pandemic screwed everything up in that case. We're friends and everything, but yeah, no, I miss having, one of the most incredible things about being a human is touch and communication, and not to be able to shake people's hands or give them a big hug, or, that's a part of us that's why there's a lot of anxiety in the world. First of all, people are being disrespected and not treating with integrity. And also people are broke and they can't feed their families, and they're not allowed to touch and hug and squeeze and kiss. And I think that combination, is what makes the world a dangerous place. And there's a way to change that around by respecting people, by giving them integrity, by, making sure that people are set financially. We're the richest country in the world, and we can really help people during the tough times and give them a bridge to when times are good again. And we just don't that's not happening in the world right now. So yeah, no, I haven't been online dating in ages, but when I did it, the shitload of horrible people, a shitload of fake people. I get that on Instagram every day, 20, 30 things a day going, am Susan, am, immediately that when they just end up saying am, delete. And, how are you handsome? Immediately that's what I think there's a group of people that live either in, maybe in Western Africa, in Ghana, and that where they sort of have like a calling center where there's a bunch of men or children or whatever, and they're told this sort of dialogue to keep. And so, every day I get like 15 to 20 fake people, and I just laugh. Sometimes I'll play along with them, tell them I'm rich and I'm in love with you, in love with them, and they're like, oh my God, I think we got a sucker, and I just keep playing it and playing it. But there's a lot of people who lose millions of dollars because like I got one the other day where a girl said, you have Cash App? And I go, no. She goes, because I'd like to send money to you. So if you give me your Cash App, I go, well, first of all, you just met me. And secondly, I don't have Cash App. I said, why don't you Venmo me the money? And says, no, I only sent it to Cash App. It's too bad because I could have really used a lot of money. And click, delete, goodbye,
So that's why the women aren't responding to me on Instagram. They think I'm a bot.
Yeah, they
No,
like you for your body.
exactly. No, but you're right though. I mean, the reason why I asked is because as a comedian, it's hard to be in a relationship because the times you're working are when normal women are free. So have you been able to get married doing it? I apologize for this other question.
I had 3 incredible relationships. I've met incredible women in my life. I've been very lucky, and I've had 3 incredible relationships that I would stand out of all of them. And I'm happy that I still love them all very much, and we have great respect for each other. It just didn't work out. I think that I'm more married to my comedy than I am to I remember David Brenner had said, look, you gotta be married to your comedy. You gotta love it. I mean, he had an incredible wife and incredible life. But I miss that. I miss the intimacy and the touch and all that. But I'm very blessed because my family's very close. I'm coming down to Florida for Thanksgiving just because, despite that I might die of COVID by flying to Florida.
Hopefully not.
I miss my my youngest brother. So me and my other brother, we're flying down for Thanksgiving to be with the intimate immediate family, just to hug and squeeze and life's too short not to have that. I'm also looking for. I called Renee, but she hasn't returned my calls. To try to see if there's anything going on Thanksgiving weekend, because I'm around that whole. I'm coming in like on the Tuesday. We'll have Thanksgiving Thursday. I'm sticking around Friday and Saturday to maybe pick up gigs here and there.
Oh, Jay Guy's pretty in with Renee, so I'm sure he'll portray that message.
Renee and I are like the really, really close, but she doesn't always call me back immediately because she's only getting 10,000 calls a day. And I understand. When I was booking Letterman, I got thousands of sets to look at. I got thousands of emails. And I mean, and to keep up with it's really hard, but I did. I didn't have an assistant. I wrote everyone back, and some slipped through the cracks, but I'd say 99% of the people heard back from me. It's not easy. So I understand what Renee's like. She's a great person, and she has this killer gig. And hopefully she didn't book Thanksgiving yet and she wants me. So if you see her, hey, tell her I said I love her and book me. Tell her to book us together.
There you go. That would be Jay's dream too. But I'm really glad that Jay and Eddie, you both came. Do you want to promote anything? Because I'm going to try to figure out a way to put it out there somehow.
Yeah, so if you're in the Alameda, Oakland area of California on the 16th and 17th and 18th of October, I will be at the brand new Alameda Comedy Club. And that's that. And you can find me on Instagram at you can find me at Instagram at Eddie Comic, EDDIE Comic. I'm on Twitter. I don't do anything political on Twitter at all. On Facebook, I fool around on that, but there's not. You can come say hi to me on Facebook, Eddie Brill. But on Twitter, I'm Eddie_Brill. But Instagram, I mostly I've been really into photography, and really that's my new love, and I've been taking a lot of photos and playing with them and editing them and using filters and I'm really getting I have a lot of cool photos on Instagram if you want to check that out.
Cool. How about you, Jay Guy?
Nice. I got New Faces of Comedy tomorrow. We got Cam Bertrand if you're in the Palm Beach area, which mostly people who are watching this probably are in the Palm Beach area. And that's it for now, man. Come watch some stand-up tomorrow. Hang out.
Jay Guy.
Yeah, man.
Go see Jay Guy. And is the people watching this now, or is this not live? You're gonna put it out and.
Yeah, I got to put it out. Unfortunately, I couldn't put it live. I'm gonna see if there's a way I could put it in like a podcast or something. Try to
Right.
figure it out. It's the first time I've encountered this, unfortunately.
Because people are going to want to see Jay Guy, and they're like, "Well, he said tomorrow,
I
and
know.
yesterday. You're going to have to work on it tonight."
I know. You gotta get more pressure. Thanks.
Yeah.
But do you want them to follow you anywhere, Jay?
So you can follow me on Instagram, Stand Up J Guy, or Facebook at J Guy. That's it, man.
Yeah.
Well-
All right, cool. Fasil, it's so nice to actually, get to chat with you. And one of these days we'll get to work together like we had
Yeah.
planned. I was going to be with you this past week.
I know. I wanted to also. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm sure when this thing blows over, we're gonna have more fun than ever. So I'm not worried. And I'll hit up Jay as well if he wants to come hang out with us. We'll see.
That'd be
Because
fantastic.
he might be on Netflix at that point. Hopefully not. No.
He'll forget us.
Yeah. He'll be booking the Tonight Show.
Right.
Going in.
He'll be booking the firehouse.
Exactly. You can follow me on Instagram at Fastilicious, and my shows will be posted on Spill the Beans Comedy. I appreciate y'all watching, and I'll see you guys around.
Thanks,
All right. Be well.
Good to
Bye.
see you.
See you too.
Take care, guys.